They say that when a sport truly gets under your skin, it stays with you forever, no matter how many years pass or where life takes you. Our guest today knows that invisible thread all too well. James Langhans was a young man from Cheshire, Connecticut, who traded baseball for jai-alai, lived through the golden age as well as the most complex times on the professional court, and years later watched as his own son grabbed those same cestas in the living room. Today we are talking with him not just about the player he once was, but about the eyes of the father who followed the game from a distance. James, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for having me. Great intro. I love it. I love the way that you just in general put kind of your take on the history of jai-alai and kind of what's going on now. So I'm honored to be here. So very excited.
Okay. James, you live in North Carolina right now. That's where you are.
Yeah, I've been here since
But
2008.
North Carolina is in the middle, more or less, of Connecticut and Florida,
Yep.
and too far away from Barcelona.
Yes.
We'll visit all these places with our memory,
Yeah.
and that's because James' storyline went from one place to another. James, when you were born, let's put it in another way. Jai-alai opened his two first fronton in Connecticut in 1976. At that time, you were 8 years old.
Yes.
But let me ask you something,
Yeah.
James. When was the first contact that you had with jai-alai?
So first time I ever saw jai-alai was I was 11 years old, 1980. My parents and I went to Milford jai-alai, and we went one Saturday night. We saw a big billboard up on 95. Decided to go, and it was packed. I mean, we could barely get a seat. We had to sit all the way up in the. I don't know if you or anybody remembers the Milford jai-alai, but they had the A, B, C, and D section. D was all the way up at the top. So we sat up there, and I mean, I just fell in love with it. As a kid that played all kinds of sports growing up, soccer, baseball, football, basketball, you name it, tennis, and I just fell in love. And it's the same story for a lot of people, especially Americans that had never seen the sport before, didn't really grow up with it. They go, and anybody that's a fan, the second you really see it and watch it and start to understand it a little bit, you really fall in love with the game. And it's just from there, that was kind of the beginning of my story of when I kind of first got introduced to it.
Was it confusing when you saw it for the first time, or
I know some people have said that they were a little confused, but for me, no. I mean, it was pretty easy to pick up on. The betting aspect, I mean, I was little, so I really didn't, follow that as much as the game. But I could follow as far as, the strategy and that kind of thing that was going on.
So you sent me some videos from the time that you were playing in Daytona, and you look fit.
I was a lot fitter back then.
Fitter than now. When you were in high school, you probably were an extraordinary athlete. But why jai-alai and not baseball or football?
It's a good question, and I loved all those sports, but for some reason, when I started playing it, it's just one of those games where I just had to keep practicing and get better. Some people say the same thing about golf, right? You're always like, you start playing and you continue to try to get better. I loved it. It was different, and it was exciting to watch, obviously, and it was very challenging, right? So um, soon after we had went, when I was a little guy, I had made these cardboard like cestas, and I was using them inside the house with a little sponge ball, practicing and trying to do all the stuff with the players that I had been watching. And my dad ended up, I think it was like in a newspaper, we saw an ad for cestas for sale, and in the classifieds, and we got a couple cestas, and there was a big handball wall in Brantford, Connecticut, at Foot Park. It may still be there, actually. And we would take tennis balls and kind of some spongy balls, and we would start trying to practice and play there, me and my dad. And right around that same time is when not the Miami, the Milford amateur facility was being built, right across the street from Milford High. So as soon as that opened up, that's when we went over there and started, practicing and playing and learning the game more.
I remember in Bridgeport some amateur players playing against the wall of the cash and carry, the supermarket.
Yes.
Were you one of those?
I was not. Most of those folks, those guys all came before me. So they were playing outside, on different school walls. And then there was a gym, I think a YMCA, that Charlie Hernandez, who played in Bridgeport and who was part of the group that opened up the amateur highlight, he had started practicing and teaching a lot of the players there before they opened up the new facility. So they were way ahead of me as far as like being exposed to the game. They were quite a bit older than me.
What was the reaction of your parents? What did they tell you when you say, "Hey, I want to try, I want to play highlight"?
They loved it. I mean, the same as me, they loved the sport. And there's just something about it. And, we as a family, were very involved. And, they saw my passion for it. We made a lot of great friends during that time, players and just other families that were playing the game. And it was a big part of my childhood, from that time until I ended up turning professional and going to Barcelona. But it was school and highlight were my two main things growing up.
I remember like it was yesterday when I got my first basket.
Yeah.
It was an old one, very dark basket. How about yours?
Mine was a backcourt cesta, believe it or not. I think it was a Javier cesta. I'm not sure which one, but I believe it was from Hartford, I think is where we ended up getting it from. And I went to the amateur highlight for the first time, and I saw Charlie and his wife at the time, Rosie, and they're like, they were introducing themselves, and we were kind of telling them that, how we had just come and we were practicing outside. And they looked at my cesta and they're like, "That's way too big." and they had a smaller one. It was like, I think it was like a 58 centimeter cesta. And they said, "Here, try this." And so that they gave me that one. And that's when I started using a smaller one. But the first one I got was big, and it was brown. Same thing.
Yeah. What was the most difficult thing when you started learning the skills of the sport?
It's a good question, and I haven't been asked that one before. I don't really remember like obviously struggling to learn the different techniques, but I think catching initially was the hardest for me, and which is strange because one of my better things was catching as I got older. But we were using a very bouncy ball, and you didn't really feel it in the cesta, and so that was always part of the challenge. And maybe that was part of the thing that helped me, when we transitioned to a regular ball, it actually, you could feel it a lot better. So it stuck. So, but for me, catching initially.
Playing baseball helps in order to learn highlight?
Yeah, I think so. It both helps and hurts. So I think hand-eye coordination is great. The ability to scoop the ball and move towards the ball and read the angles, I think, is very helpful. For a lot of guys, the throwing motion is difficult because the throw of jai-alai is different than baseball. So you'll see, especially in a lot of Americans that were older that took it up, you'll see some of those, the form is a little bit different because of just what they played for so many years growing up. I took it up when I was 11, so I was able to adapt pretty well. Um, I think, obviously the sooner you get playing, the easier it is to kind of work on your fundamentals. So I didn't have a lot of bad habits initially.
We'll talk about that later, but one of your two sons, Douglas, started playing pretty adult, not pretty late.
Yeah. Yeah. He was 18 when he started playing. And we can get into that later. But both Matt or Douglas and Benny are both really good athletes. So they were able to really adapt to that. But yeah, they both played baseball growing up.
Do you remember the day that you said to yourself, well, I'm going to become a pro player no matter what?
I was probably around 13 or 14, and I'd been getting a lot of positive feedback from a lot of older players that said, you really look like you could, do something with the game. I didn't have a lot of power back then. I never really did have a lot of power, but I was skinny, but my fundamentals were really good. My just feel for the game was good. And I would say around, 13, 14 is really when I was like, this is what I want to try to do. I want to try to become a professional jai-alai player. And it was tough too, because in high school, I was still playing soccer. So uh, at certain times during the season, I would have to go. The Bridgeport Jai-alai School was open at that time. So I would have to leave soccer practice early and go to play, go down to Bridgeport. And it was at least it was probably 45-minute drive from there. So I'd miss a lot of practice. And finally the soccer coach is like, you got to make a decision. Like, do you want to play soccer or do you want to play hockey? I made the decision to just focus on that.
James, could you explain to someone that doesn't know the sport how is the sound of the ball?
It's one of the crack that it makes. Me and the kids always joke. We always talk about the granite sound, right? But there's something about that cracking sound of the ball that is unique, right? And I know as a kid going into Milford. Now this is before they changed the rule that you had to be 18 in Connecticut to get into the jai-alais, but I would even sneak into Hartford and Milford. Hartford was easier to sneak into when I was 16. But when you're coming up, from the betting area through the little tunnel, and you can hear the crack of the ball that they're out there warming up. There was just something about that was very exciting, and you knew that you were at the jai-alai fronton, and that's unique. It's, I would describe it for people that really like, baseball. When you walk out and you see the green field, like when you get out into the open, it's that same kind of experience for me, and that sound was part of it for sure.
You say that you used to go to Milford. Did you have any reference as far as players? Which one were your favorites?
So at Milford at that time, Waristi was the best player there. And he was always very interesting because, he interacted with the crowd quite a bit, so the crowd would boo him or they would cheer him. So he was always very interesting to watch. And then I don't know if you remember Uria. He was a backcourter, Uria. He was always very fun to watch, and he had a kind of a temper. So
he got a bad temper.
Yes, so he was very emotional, and it was always kind of fun to watch him. As I got older, and this is as I was like 16, age 15, Joey came. Bolivar was there, Elordui, and I had never seen anybody throw a right side like Elordui in my life. I mean, the way the ball moved was incredible. Elorza was there, um, and then Pedroso came there towards the end. A lot of younger guys at that time that were coming up. So, but when I first started, Waristi was the guy.
I can see that when you were playing pro, you had a good costado remate.
Yes. Yeah, that was kind of my go-to. So as a guy that didn't have a ton of power, I had to be able to kill the point, and that shot always felt very natural to me. Charlie Hernandez, who was kind of my first coach or teacher, he was very, I mean, he had a very good costado as well. And he learned down in North Miami, and he learned from the teachers down there. I don't think it was Aparicio. It might have been Epifanio and Orbe and some others. But he was very good with the costado. So he taught me a lot of stuff with that. And so that was kind of, my game was built around being able to kill the point. My rebote was good. So just really kind of, back then, we used to go to the floor quite a bit with rebote. So I would do that to generate more power. I could throw a lot of shots from that spot. So that was kind of my strength.
How does it feel when you throw a costado, two corner shots, a perfect shot? How does it feel? What's the sensation?
I don't know. I would say it's similar to hitting a home run in baseball. It feels effortless when you.
Did you ever hit a home run?
Growing up in youth baseball, yes. But when you hear like MLB, players talk about hitting a home run, it's almost like nothing, right? Everything is just perfect, and it's the same thing with like a perfect costado or any kind of a kill shot. Everything just feels so smooth, and it when you release it. You can win points on ones that you don't feel great about, but when you hit one just right, it's like effortless. Probably similar to like a golf shot, right? When you hit something off the tee, it just goes perfectly. So same type of feeling.
So you're learning the skills in Milford, in Bridgeport, and it was a sudden happening, or you decided to go to Europe, to Barcelona. Explain us, how was that?
Yeah, so I'm around 15, 16. I graduated high school. I was 17 when I graduated, and I had been going to the Bridgeport High School, so I knew Ricardo Sotil, and at that time Francisco Navas, way back, was the assistant player manager there. And then later, Ricardo Sotil was working with the American Federation as far as coaching, and I was involved in those practices. And he knew, and a lot of the players, the older veteran players, knew that I wanted to play. And it was interesting because at that time, well, really, Connecticut had the three big highlights: Bridgeport, Milford, and Hartford, and they were really good rosters, right? And it was they were seasoned players. So there were guys that played early and middle games there that in another fronton may have been late game players, right? So it was very difficult as a rookie just to go in with no experience. And so that was kind of the feedback that I was getting. And they were saying that, look, the best thing for you would be to go over to Spain and play in, what baseball would say is like the minor leagues, right? Like you need to get experience in a smaller highlight and keep growing from there. And so between Ricardo and Francisco Navas, they put a call into the player manager at Barcelona, which was Urquiaga's brother, I believe, that played at Hartford. And they got me the contract to play there. So pretty soon after I graduated in 1986, I went there and started playing. And it was the experience of my life. It was quite it was eye-opening for a 17-year-old to go over there.
I want to hear, yeah, I want to hear about that, James, because I was very young when I left home too, and I know how it feels. But I want to know how was the experience for you from Cheshire, Connecticut, small town
Yeah.
probably, and went to a big city, a cultural clash probably.
Yeah.
What are your memories?
It was so long ago, but it still feels like yesterday to me. Um, I was fortunate because there was another American playing there, Jimmy Pollock, who was ball boy at Bridgeport. We played in Daytona for a little while, and he was there. And so, me going over there, he was living there with he had a girlfriend, Spanish girlfriend at the time. And they had a small apartment with an extra room. So it was easy for me initially, easier because I had someone there that had already been there, right? And so that was good. I was able to move in with him, and then just really being exposed not only to the culture, which was phenomenal, and I had had some exposure to it just because I knew so many of the Basque players growing up. Hearing the different stories and the food and all that kind of stuff that we would have and experience. But um, obviously Barcelona is different than the Basque Country, but I had a little bit of an idea of what it might be. But so that aspect, and then just being in a locker room to where um, everybody had the same goal, right? Everybody was competing to get a contract, and it's a very unique scenario. I always felt like the highlight locker room is different than a lot of sports locker rooms because it's probably closer to tennis than it is like football or baseball, in that on those you're a team, right? You're all working together for one common goal. In a highlight locker room, you are a team in a sense. Now with battle court now it's completely different, but um, you are also an individual working for, competing against each other. So, and this has been talked about a bunch, especially like we may be competing against each other one game, and then the next game we're partnered up. So there's that dynamic, which is very interesting. And, you see a lot of characters over the years and things. Most of the time it's pretty good. I mean, I would say the majority of the time it's fine, but every once in a while something, crazy would happen, just tension and being competitive and that kind of thing. And yeah, just learn. I think those were two of the biggest things, is just really like trying to find my place. Like, okay, so I was coming up and now here I am. Like, there's a lot of good players here, um, and I gotta continue to work and get better.
And you started playing there, and you improved very fast.
I did. I practiced a lot. I the partido play for me, and this is one thing that everybody preached about growing up, is that that's really where you start to improve your skills, playing partidos versus quinellas, because you're in a match, right? And it's, 25, 30, 35 points depending on which partido you're in. And there's the up and down of the match. There's a lot of points that you have to play. A quinella, you could win a point, come around, get an over serve. All of a sudden, you've got three. Somebody drops a serve, you've got game point, and you play one good point and you win the game. So, not to say that you can't improve, but it accelerates your learning. I always felt like, because you just get a lot of quality play in a short amount of time. And
How about the audience?
the
Did
audience,
they boo you?
oh, I mean, depending on how the match was going, um, the audience was the best. I'll tell you, and I say this all the time. I tell Douglas and Benny the same thing. My favorite place to play, and I played at Milford when they were still getting big crowds, and even Daytona, Melbourne had some good crowds in the beginning. There's no place like playing it in Barcelona for me. It was very intimate. they had the balcony up above, and you would have people, yelling down there, yelling at you, or cheering. And then the bets would change based on how the match was going. And you had the bookmakers down in the front with the tennis balls, and they would have to hold the match if the odds were changing, or if it was like 28, 29, 29 all, and you'd have to wait for the bets to go in. And of course everybody was smoking back then. It was 1986, so like there was the cloud of smoke was in there, and it was just very interesting. And to me, it's the best experience that I've ever had playing, for sure. The one I look most
How
fondly
about the
about.
relationship with the player manager? How was your relationship with the player?
It was okay. I mean, it's difficult because I was so young, right? And so you're still learning. And I had always, I had, looking back, I understand, like you're managing 30, 40 players, right? And it's very difficult. Everybody has different complaints and issues. I mean, I never had any problems really with him. He was fine to me in general. Um, but it's, as a young person, you're like, I wish that I would get more advice or whatever. And that's something that I did learn, is that I had been coached growing up, right? And then as soon as I turned pro, the coaching stops. It was very interesting. And I think things have changed a little bit now based on, it could be a generational thing. But as far as like advice from like the player managers and things like that, it was very minimal. And I don't know if that was specific to me, or maybe just me not asking. Could be. It could have been on me. Me not being open enough to say, hey, what do you think about this? But there was some, but I think that was the biggest thing that I noticed, the biggest change. But as far as relationships go, all
Were
my
you a
player
shy,
managers were good.
were you a shy person at the time?
I think so. I've always been a little bit more quiet, I think, when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I'm much more, not outspoken, but just more, outgoing, I think, as I've gotten older. But I did keep to myself quite a bit when I was young.
How about inside the court? Were you aggressive or conservative?
As far as playing goes, I was pretty aggressive as far as like trying to kill the point. Now, I was more aggressive when I was younger. As I got older, I started to be a little less aggressive, work the point a little bit more. And that's one thing that I learned, especially at Barcelona, is that work the point a little bit more, work it more, put the ball to the corner, try to set it up, and then kill the point. Don't try to force it immediately. And so that's something that I learned. So for my play style, I was aggressive, but I think I kind of balanced that with trying to be smart out there. Um, my emotions when I was younger, um, I was much more emotional when I was younger. And as I started to get older, then I was like, I didn't show hardly any emotion on the court. And I think that was, I remember when I got to Melbourne, and Bengoa and Pedro Sardui were the assistant player manager. And Bengoa, like within the first 2 weeks I was there, I got fines for like hitting the wall when I came into the players' cage after a point. I got escuela, school, and so you had to stay from like the first game to the last game for like the week. And I got that like 2 times, and I'm like, all right, forget this. I'm not doing this anymore. And that's really when I started to really get my emotions kind of, and especially back then,
Yeah.
like you couldn't look at the crowd. You really couldn't show up the judges. You had to like lose the point and leave. And so that was the generation that I grew up in. And so that's what I kind of ended up being like.
In Barcelona, could you make a living out of playing jai-alai?
Oh gosh, no. I think I want to say so. At the end of the week, we'd go upstairs and they would total up our earnings, right, for the partidos that we played, or sometimes you would play quinellas in the evening program. If you weren't in a partido, well, no, if you were in the third or fourth partido, you played the quinellas, and then if you were not in it, you could also play one of the two singles quinella games. And so, depending on what you earned for the week, you'd get cash, right? Now, that's great, but the downside was that they had the bar there and you could get sandwiches and drinks and other stuff. So you could put that on your tab throughout the week. And then when you would go up and get paid, they would deduct what you used at the bar. And so like you get like $20 or whatever. But no, my parents, they sent me money during that time. It was the only way that I could have gotten by. So I had opened up, I remember I opened up a bank account at, I don't even know if it's still, if this bank is still there. It was in Barcelona. It was La Caixa, Caixa, and I had a bank book, and you would just go there. Like, I mean, there was no ATMs or anything. Like, you go to the bank and withdraw money. You know, it was kind of funny. But yeah, I could have never gotten by without my parents supporting me.
Yeah, Barcelona was kind of a train station. See, everybody waiting for a train to get a ticket to go somewhere else. And
Yeah.
most of the times, but Florida or Connecticut,
Yeah.
in your time, that was the case. How did you get a ticket to play in Daytona or Melbourne?
So when Daytona and Melbourne, when they had passed, I think there was a law that they passed in Florida that the highlights could open up and play year round. So Daytona and Melbourne went from playing 6 months and 6 months to both frontons being open year round. So they needed a whole nother roster. So Bengoa and Milt Roth, who was the vice president or president of those two facilities, were touring all around. I think they went to Tijuana. They might have gone to Guernica and some other places, but they came to Barcelona, and they signed, I believe it was 11 players out of there. And I was one of the 11. And Aspiri, I was actually not even scheduled to play that day, and that night that they were there, and there was a scratch, and I got put in. I played really well, and Aspiri, who was one of the older bookmakers, and I guess kind of a legend in the game, he had been involved in, I don't know if he was a player manager, done a lot of things over the years. He had put in a recommendation for me, and they said, he said, I know you've signed all these players, but you really should sign the American. He's got a lot of potential. And so it was supposed to be 10, and they signed me they made it 11 out of there. So
you know what, James? Years before, I went to Tampa because of Aspiri's recommendation.
Really? I mean, I owe my he was the one that gave me the push to go, the recommendation, and he's like, and I remember him telling me, he's like, did Bengoa talk to you? I said yes. He said I put in a good word for you. He's like, just keep doing what you're doing, and keep eating, because I was really skinny, and I had a tough time gaining weight. I wish that was the case now, but back then, he's like, keep eating, keep trying to get stronger, just keep doing what you're doing. You're going to have a good career. And he was the one that gave me the recommendation to go. So that's interesting.
I didn't ask you about the debut partido in Barcelona. Do you remember it?
I do. I played with
the first partido you played.
Yeah, I played with Jimmy, who was the other American. It was the first match. We won. And we played against Cugat, who was he was Catalan. He was a professional, but he was from Barcelona, and I don't recall who the backcourter was, but he was a Basque backcourter, young guy, and we won. Me and Jimmy had won that match. I was pretty nervous, but we won. And my dad said that he smoked a whole pack of cigarettes watching that match because he had come over
Oh,
with me when I had initially. He was there
oh
for my
yeah.
first week when we went over there,
Oh.
and so it was pretty special.
How about in Daytona? Do you remember your first games, your first quinielas over there?
Yeah, I was a little less nervous because I'd been playing for a while. I know that I won the singles the opening night, um, and that made me, feel pretty confident. And I knew a lot of the guys that were there already. I'd played against them, or I, knew of them, so I felt more comfortable playing there because we were all kind of a lot of us were newer. Now there were some veteran guys that were playing in the later games that they had houses in Melbourne, so they decided to stay and play in Melbourne year round versus going to Daytona. But yeah, it's just a totally different experience.
James, what's the difference? What was the difference between playing in Barcelona and in Daytona as far as the crowds, the pressure?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest change for me was the going from partidos to quinellas, and that's a big adjustment. And I know as like most American guys growing up, it was like that's all they had seen, quinellas. For me, switching from partitos to quinellas was a little bit of a change. And there's a strategy in quinellas, right? In being an effective quinella player, right? You need to be consistent. And then there's also times when, in the first round, if you get a point or you get to three, coming around the second time, you've got just 2 points to score to win it. Then you also look at, who are you serving to and who do you have coming up. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into that to be a good quinella player than just going out and just playing. So for me, that was the biggest adjustment. The other thing were the crowds were a lot nastier. I feel like they, not in a bad way, but they were much more focused on the betting. Now they were betting in Barcelona too, but they also appreciated the good play, and just the night out versus in the high lies. It was pretty much there are fans, right? But it was more about the win, place, and show for me.
Did you learn any Spanish living among Basque
I
players?
did. I took Spanish all the way from fifth grade all the way through when I graduated, and then I became pretty fluent. I mean, not great, but pretty good living in Spain and even playing. But now years away from the game, I mean, I still have a little bit, but it's I'm very rusty. Let's put it that way.
When you were after losing a point, did you curse in English or in Spanish?
Uh, Depends. In When I was in Barcelona, I cursed in English because I never got in trouble. And then I would curse in both probably Spanish and English when I was playing. Um, More so Spanish probably when I was younger. When I was playing in Daytona, Melbourne, those times for sure.
1988, James, the spring of 1988. You were at that time 20 years old,
Yeah.
and suddenly, in a matter of few weeks or days, most of the players, most of them Basque players, decided to go on a strike. You did too in the first moment. What happened later?
You know, Looking back, and that's such a complex time. I mean, it's simple in one sense, right? You say, "Oh, did you go on strike or did you not go on strike?" Right? And it's more. I think it's more layered than that. Um, I did at that time. I was 19 in my first season at Melbourne, and went out on strike. It all happened so quickly, and I feel like um, it was a lot of emotions were going on at that time. So I went out on strike, and then pretty soon after, ended up returning to play. And at that time, at that age, that was the decision I made. I felt like at the time for me, it was the right thing for me to do. Looking back in hindsight, would I do it differently? Yeah, probably. I probably would not have gone back to play, but that's me at 57. Now looking back all these years at what I did at 19. Um, so, it's one of those things. But then again, I wouldn't change anything about, my life. I think you learn through your experiences, right? Your decisions as you grow up, right? And there's certain things you do, and you look back and you're like, oh man, maybe I should have done it differently. But the reality is, you're the person or the people that we are today based on things that have happened. So, would I change anything? No. But looking back, would I probably, if I could do things differently, I probably would not have gone back to play. But again, at the time, it was the right decision for me. So, you just take that and keep moving on.
What was passing through your mind the night before you decided to return playing?
It's a really good question. I had actually decided to return. I had talked to Milt Roth, and then I had changed my mind, and I was very unsure about what I wanted to do. And I ended up meeting with John Dallas, Sardui, maybe somebody else too. And we were just talking about the different scenarios. And then I ended up, basically deciding to go ahead and still go back and play. But I had, that night before, I had actually changed my mind. It's a good question. I had actually changed my mind and decided that I was not going to do it. I was very much on the fence about what I should do or not do. And, met that night and talked, and then eventually just, made the decision and just went forward from there. So there was no turning back at that point.
Did you ask your father for
I
advice or
did.
someone close to you?
Yeah, I did. And, he basically said, it's up to you, right? It's what I felt right about doing at the time. There was a lot of negatives, obviously, going back. And, I think at that time and just my age, I just felt like that was what I needed to do, to really keep my dream going. And I felt, right, follow your dream or get pulled into this other, I guess, competing, just goals of, like, what do we do? What's right, what's wrong? And so I went with, and that was the decision I ended up going with. He was like, whatever you decide, I'm going to be behind you 100%, but you're the one doing it. You've got to, whatever the decision is, just make sure you're comfortable with it.
What was like crossing the picket line, James?
The driving through, or just the playing?
Yeah, the driving through and the symbolic attached to it, going back to the locker room.
I'll tell you honestly, it did not feel great. Now for my game and my career, it helped. Not that I was playing against. I mean, there were some good players, but playing against some lesser competition. But just it didn't feel great because I knew and had a lot of friends or former friends that were out there doing something then, and I was going against that. And so that felt it didn't feel good, right? There's nothing to feel good about that at all. Because I had spent my whole life really being welcomed, and that highlight had been such an important part of my life growing up. And to now have this it blow up, and not the sense that the community itself was very fractured, right? And so you had the
mm,
jai-alai frontons wanting one thing, you had the union trying to do something else, and then nobody could get on the same page, right? And um, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, the strike led to the end of jai-alai," and it may have helped accelerate things, but the truth is, things were already starting to go in a downward direction. The right, things
mm,
had already been happening that maybe we didn't see that much, but that the jai-alai owners were really not aware of or didn't think was going to happen, and didn't prepare for that. So that's why it kind of went so quickly down, in my
mm.
opinion, anyway.
There's no question that the strike was the fracture of the community,
Yeah.
as you said it. Yeah. Being a guy from Connecticut, were you dreaming about going back home to play?
Yeah. I mean, that was, for me, that was like the top of the chain, right? I know a lot of people talk about Miami, but for me, growing up in Connecticut, Milford, Bridgeport, and Hartford were it was the place to be, and that was always my goal, was to eventually get back there. And I had been playing in now Melbourne had closed at this point, so it was just Daytona, and so playing in Daytona, doing really well. The strike had ended. Players had come back. Players had come back
Yeah.
at this point, and was doing really well. And I could see that the crowds were starting to get smaller, right? And I'm sure it was this way everywhere. But I was like, geez,
Excuse me,
yeah.
James. At that time, were you foreseeing the decline of Highline?
Um,
When did you realize? Well, this is going down.
I could see it after the strike had ended. I could see the crowds really didn't come back, and I don't think that wasn't because of the strike, or it just was the reality of the business at that point. It's not like, okay, the strike's over and now all the crowds come back. That wasn't the case. It was like the business had kind of, the parimutuel business, in my opinion, had kind of started to get flat and go down. Not just jai-alai, dogs, horses, everything. And the crowds were not as great, and I could just see things were different. And I knew Milford was doing well at this point, or at least significantly better, and they were paying more. And so I had several really good seasons at Daytona. I'd finished second in wins. I had gotten an MVP. I'd gotten a doubles championship. I was playing really well. And so I decided to reach out to a Gerby at Milford. And I think when we talked about it, I called him, on a rotary telephone. I dialed him up and I wrote him a letter, because there's no email, no text, nothing back then. So this is 1991, early 1991. And he ends up calling me back, and he says, thank you for reaching out. And he knew me from when I was a teenager. So a lot of when I talked about Ricardo Sotil and his work with the U.S. team, we would practice at Hartford and Milford. And so I knew, I didn't know him well, but I had met a Gerby and he'd seen me play, and I was like 15, 16 years old at that time. So he knew of me. So anyway, he said, the roster's full this year, and I'm sure it's the same answer he gives a lot of guys, but roster's full. But if something opens up, we'll keep you in mind. I said, okay. So anyway, now I'm I did that, and I'm playing at Daytona, and Andres was the player manager at that time, who was phenomenal. Just a really big help for me in my career. And talking about like just advice and things like that I talked about earlier, he was one that was always, he would always give you little things, at least for me, like, ideas and tips and that type of thing. And I remember he called me in the office, He said, Douglas, can I talk to you? And I was like, okay. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, this can't be good because I never get called into the office, right? And so I come in and he's like, close the door. And he said, he said, have you been talking to a Gerby? And I was like, oh boy. And he said, well, Gerby called me and he said that you had talked to him about maybe going to play there. And I said, and now I'm nervous. I'm like, well, yeah, I did, but I like it here. It's not like I said, it just happened to, I'm interested in maybe going there. Not that I don't like it here. He's like, no, I get it. He said, I talked to him and one of the players just got hurt and he's out for the season. And this was like the first week of the season. And he said, he wants you to come play. And he said, I talked to Milt Roth and we're going to release you from your contract. And at that time, they never released anybody. I mean, if they did, it was very rare. He said, I talked to Milt, we're going to release you from your contract and you can go play. He said, Gerby's out walking his dog. When he gets back, he's going to call and then I'll call you in. And I had the 2 games off. He said, so wait around here. So I'm waiting and he calls me and he said, he goes through the whole story and he said, we need you here, next week. And this was the contract and it was quite a bit more money than I was making in Daytona. So I was very excited about that. So within the span of a week, I was, packing up and getting ready to move. And of all things, my parents were down visiting and my oldest daughter, we had just had, Faith was just born. And so she was little. And they're like, they were down visiting. I'm like, we got to move up to Milford. So we started packing the U-Haul and away we went. And so that was in June of 91. And
so sweet home again, back.
Yeah, and it was, gosh, I remember I was nervous and excited at the same time. And so I remember I was playing the late games in Daytona. And so when I get there, I go to a Gerby. So like, I could start practicing this and that. I said, so am I going to be in the late games? So I was very young. I'm like, he's like, well, we're going to start you in the early games and we'll see how things go, but that was just my mindset at the time. Right. I was like pushing to get better. Not in an arrogant way. I was just like, I had that hunger, and so I went up there, that first season. I finished second in wins. I did work my way into the later games for a little while. And finished second in wins, got most improved player. I had the most wins with 2 weeks to go, and Zabala, who ended up winning, just blew by me in the end. And he had a great season. But I was really happy about the way I played. But going up there, at that time, it was Milford and Hartford was year-round, or close to it, like 11 months. Milford was open for 6 months. Bridgeport was open for 6 months. So in reality, I only had a 6-month contract because once Milford ended, that was it. And I ended up getting a call from Chiruka about, I want to say, maybe a month to go in the season. And they offered me a contract to go play at Bridgeport. And so I ended up, going Milford and Bridgeport until 1995, I think, is when Bridgeport closed. We went back and forth. But I was so happy.
You got a knee injury.
Yeah, I ended up, so I played.
You got a knee injury.
Yeah, in the end of 98. So October 1998, playing in Milford. And so my entire, so I ended up playing 12 years professionally. And I would have injuries, sore, whatever, but nothing major. Never anything with surgery. And, as far as being a player, prize money is such a big portion of what you make, right? You've got your salary and your prize money. It's probably 50-50 almost, right? So you don't want to scratch, right? So I always played. And This was October of '98, playing in Milford, and my left knee was really bothering me a lot. And there's a back quarter, and I don't think we talked about this. There's a back quarter. He's from Marquina, great guy. Arietta, he played under Arietta. Um, Eduardo Edu. He plays. He's a truck driver now. Um, really strong guy, throws really hard. Terrific person. And I remember we were playing a game, and of course I wore knee pads and stuff because I would always go to the floor. And I got caught up kind of close, and he threw an outside placement. He was a back quarter, and I kind of misjudged it, went off my frame, and it hit my left knee. And it started bothering me, and it wasn't for that hit, but that's about when I started feeling the pain in the knee. And so I was thinking, oh, I like bruised it, right? And kept playing, and it was getting to the point now that I really didn't think I could play anymore. So I said to myself, it was a singles game coming up, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to go out there, try to put it out of my mind, and move as best I can. So anyway, I'm out there playing. I go to do a rebote, go to the floor like I'd done 100,000 times, and I land on my right knee, and I felt a pop, and I was like, oh, that's bad. And this is my other knee. I'm like, that's unusual, right? And so turns out I tore my MCL and my PCL. And so I get off the court, and I'm laying on the masseuse table, and Isasa was our masseuse and trainer. And I'm laying on the table, and I remember Gerby peeks his head in the doorway, and he said, "Is it his knee?" Because he knew I was dealing with the knee problem. And Isasa goes, "It's his knee." He said, "Yes, but it's his other knee." And I remember Gerby going, he put his head down and walked out. And so now I had two bad knees. And so I go to the doctor, orthopedic, and I tell them what's going on. They're like, okay, we're going to get you an MRI. And so while we're here, I said, I'm having a problem with my shoulder. I've got no range of motion. Can you check this out? So I said, sure. Because I'm figuring since I'm in here, I might as well get all fixed up, right? And so they do all the tests. They come back. They said, okay, you have a torn labrum in your right shoulder. We're going to be able to fix that. No problem. You got 2 ligament tears in your right knee. We're going to fix that. No problem. Your left knee, you have an issue because you have no cartilage under your kneecap. And that's why you have all the pain. And you've got some torn meniscus and some other stuff. They said, we'll go in, we'll smooth everything out, but we really don't think you can play anymore. And I was like, what do you mean I can't play anymore? Like, I'm just hitting my prime. I'm like 29 years old coming up. And he's like, no, you really need to consider a different job. And I was like, come on. And so anyway, I have the surgeries, I start rehabbing, and I start to try to play. And I notice that I keep having this stabbing pain in my left knee. And I'm like, wow, I really am not going to be able to play. Now, this is, 20 something years ago or whatever now, almost 30 years. 27, 28 years. And the medical technology obviously is better now than it was back then. It was pretty good back then, but not like it is now. So there's probably gels and other things they probably could have done back then that they would do now, but
yes,
that was it.
Because of the injuries, did you get the government compensation at that time?
I did. So I was under contract for 1999. So I was out all of 99. I was on workers' comp, and I did get a small settlement at the end, but nothing. I had heard all these great stories about guys that had gotten in. I was not one of them, unfortunately. So while I was out,
were you prepared?
Oh no.
Were you prepared for retirement? Or?
No, not at all. I mean, so my plan, my goal, my dream in jai-alai was to play as long as I can. Back then, you would see guys play into their late 30s, maybe. My goal was to, play as long as I can and then get into the management side, whether not necessarily a player manager, but something, something on the business side of things, or, a coach or, marketing, something involved in the highlight. That was my plan. And within, a couple of, months, boom, that was all gone. And so I was like, well, shoot, now what am I going to do? So while I was out and rehabbing, I had this idea that I was going to become a chef. So I went to culinary school and got a culinary degree. And I started working at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut. And I was there for a very short time. And it was like 2:00 in the morning and wasn't getting paid that much money. And I'm sitting in a freezer moving these bones around that we were going to make a stock out of. And the shelf shook and the stock blood fell on my head, and it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm in a freezer and I'm like, this is not for me. This is not what I want to do. I need to do something else. And I remember going home and telling my wife, I'm like, yeah, I said, this chef thing is not going to work out. I got to do something else. So fortunately for me, a couple of guys that I played with, Matera, who played in Hartford and also Milford, he was out of the game, and he was working for a technology company in Glastonbury, Connecticut. And also Edward, who played, I played with him growing up, and then he played in Milford and Hartford, and he was working there also. And so I reached out, and sure enough, that was around the technology boom time, and they got me a job there. And that was kind of my entrance into technology sales, and that's what I have done for the past 26 years now.
When did you go to North Carolina?
2008. So I was working. The company I was working for had an office in Connecticut, and their corporate headquarters was in North Carolina, and they wanted to work in their corporate office because I was managing a team that was based out of Cary, North Carolina. So they said, "Oh, we're going to relocate you down here," and so so that's how I ended up getting down here initially.
You have two sons. They play under the name of Douglas and Benny. Right now they're on vacation in Miami in the Jam Arena.
Yeah.
But they were living in North Carolina, and in North Carolina there are no any frontons at all. But how did they start playing? What was the story?
It's so interesting because they grew up playing all kinds of sports, baseball especially, right? So I was coaching. We had a batting cage in our backyard, and so now jai-alai is a long distant memory, right? The only other time I went to jai-alai was in 2003 when Milford was closing. Me and my dad went to watch the last night. But when I was done with jai-alai, that was it. I was done. And so now we're in North Carolina, and they're playing baseball. We're coaching. I'm coaching. They're doing really good. And Douglas, Matt, he's getting a lot of looks from colleges and other things, and he starts having shoulder issues, shoulder pain. And he ends up needing to have, he had a torn labrum. So he has a torn labrum, has the surgery. And when surgery goes good, but when he comes back, arm just never felt the same, right? And he kind of lost that passion for baseball. Mm-hmm. And I come home one day from work, and all my old jai-alai stuff is now unpacked in the garage. I had old cestas and my old pictures and all that kind of stuff packed away. And I guess they were cleaning out or doing something, but they found it, and all the stuff was out, right? And they had the cestas out, and we had buckets of baseballs, and they're like, "Hey, how come you never showed us how to play jai-alai or anything?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just never thought about it." And so they're like, "Oh, could you show us?" And So we took the couple of buckets of baseballs and all the old jai-alai cestas and went in the batting cage and started showing them how to throw and this and that. And um, Matt being older, and Benny at this time was still like really into baseball, and Matt was looking for another sport, and he loved it, right? So he starts practicing in the cage and throwing, and so I start working on the technique of teaching them how to throw and all this. And we found an old handball wall near Duke University called Duke Park, and I was searching online. I'm like, gosh, there's got to be a racquetball court or a wall around here. And there was a small racquetball court in Southern Pines near Pinehurst Golf Course, and then there was this other wall. And so then we start going there, and we're practicing a little bit there. And they had gotten so like hooked on it that, and in coaching baseball, we used a lot of video. So I'd video the guys, not just, Matt and Ben, but like the other kids on the team. We'd video them hitting, pitching, doing everything to, work on the fundamentals, changing their stance or whatever. And they were doing the same thing, but with jai-alai. So they would have me throw the ball and they would film me. And then they, while I was at work, they would be out there throwing, filming themselves, making these adjustments, And so it was interesting because it accelerated the development for them, focusing so much on the form and the fundamentals of throwing, rather than just going out on a big court with one ball and trying to throw the ball, and you drop it and you walk and you get it. And that they were so focused on getting the fundamentals down, and we were developing all these different drills, like the rebote. I would throw them the ball, or I would be pitching to them and they would catch it and then throw, and all these different things. So we would do that in the cage. Then we would go to the wall. And I remember, now they're really into it. So I would put on Dania jai-alai and we would watch the feed. And, John, your son was playing, and Eric and all those guys, and then they were asking me stories about old players. And I was like, oh, I used to play with Ubi was there. I was like, I used to play with his dad, and, all this kind of stuff. And it was just really interesting. And that it was really a blessing, because it reintroduced me to something that was such a big part of my life growing up. And then in 98, 99, when I got hurt, it ended, right? And there was nothing. And then, now with their interest in it, all of a sudden, 20 years later, it was back, and I was like reminiscing, telling them all these things. And for anybody, and you've talked to a lot of people, that have, got hooked on jai-alai, it's one of those sports that as soon as you start playing it or you get interested in it, it's like, it's in your, everybody say it's in your blood, right? It's like, you just love it, right? You can't explain it, right? It's just something.
Did you transform the batting cage for jai-alai?
Yeah, a little bit. I would move things around because I needed a little bit higher, and I needed the L screen, which we would pitch from behind. I moved that back a little bit so we could do certain things. And then I had a little string for a line that would be like the lower pad, and we would, say, hey, that's like the lower cushion. You got to make sure you get it above there. And then the corner of the cage, I would say, like, imagine like this side of the screen is the left wall. And then that's the front wall right here. So you want to try to hit it up in that corner and that type of thing. Visualizing.
What James, what your neighbors were saying at that time when they saw you doing those things?
Yeah. So fortunately, we were on a cul-de-sac, and there was only 3 houses. But what was funny is that I had to keep reinforcing the net, because when you would throw, the jai-alai ball is a little bit smaller and it's smoother than a baseball. So sometimes it would go through the net, right? And so I had to keep reinforcing and adding extra netting to keep the ball from going through. But every once in a while it would go through, right? And our neighbor, who's a very nice guy, he had a greenhouse. And we threw the ball, I think it was Matt threw it, and it went through and we heard boom. And we're like, oh, shoot. He wasn't home. And we were over there. Anytime a ball would go over, we'd be searching for the ball, right? We'd be like, all right, so it went through this angle and there was a pond over there. And sometimes it would go into the pond and we'd have to find it. But we couldn't find this one. So anyway, next day we come back and I'm like, let me go look for that ball. And it was either Benny or Matt, or they're like, Dad, you got to come see this. And I go look, and the guy we had put a hole like in the greenhouse, and he had propped the ball up next to it and put like he'd set it on a rock holding, like saying, I know what you did, it was kind of funny, but the ball was there like plugging the hole. So, but that was funny. So, but he would ask, hey, what are you guys doing? And we would tell him. And, we even went to like some baseball fields because they wanted to see how far they could throw, right? So that was the other thing is like, if you play on like a really small racquetball court, you can develop small form, right? Like it's very short, right? Because you can't follow through. So I said, this was the other thing. I'm like, let's go to a baseball field because I want you guys to be able to extend and throw, without just worrying about throwing it short. So we would go to these fields and we would throw the ball, back and forth. And then people would be walking their dogs or whatever. And they're like, we were shocked the amount of people that would be like, hey, are you guys playing jai-alai? Is there a jai-alai league around here? We're like, no, there's no jai-alai league. But we would get that inevitably at Duke Park, or someone would always come up and say, hey, is that jai-alai? Oh, yeah, I grew up in Miami, or I remember that, or I was over somewhere and I saw it. Or they would just be like, hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, that's really cool. And we'd say, yeah, just, tell them to look it up.
James, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Which ball goes farther? The one thrown by the jai-alai player or the one thrown by the baseball with the bat?
Oh, you can throw it farther.
Like a home run, for instance.
I think forehand you can throw it farther because with the backhand it gets a different spin. I think you can throw it farther, but I've seen some guys hit some bombs with the bat, so it just depends on who it is. But I feel like you can throw it farther.
The movie hasn't ended yet, and suddenly it's like some sort of miracle. Your sons get the chance of playing jai-alai professionally down in Florida.
Yeah.
No. Okay. What was that? How was that?
You couldn't really, if you wrote a book and you said, or say, hey, this is a movie, you wouldn't believe it because it's just so many things happened. We're doing this practicing up, here in North Carolina, and Matt, at that time, he's like, I really want to try to do something with this sport. What can we do? And I'm like, it's tough here. The only highlight that's really open is Dania. But at the same time, Magic City had just started. And it was in its first season. And, if you remember the first season at Magic City, they were very raw, right? The players were, they were very green. And so I said, maybe I can reach out to, Dan Licciardi, who was the manager at that time. I didn't know Stu. I knew of Stu, but I didn't know Stu. And then I didn't really know Ara. I knew of him. I said, let me reach out and, see if we can, we'll go down there and watch and see if we can get you on the court or see what they say. So we go down there. I talked to Dan on the phone, and he said, well, he said, you're coming down. He's like, make sure you ask for me when you get here. So anyway, we get there and we watch the performance at Magic City. Dan comes down and we're talking to him. We're talking to Ara. We're talking to Stu. And now at this point, the only court Matt had ever been on, actually, Matt or Benny at this point, was North Miami. We had come down for this trip, and we played at North Miami. That's the first time that they'd ever been on a court. So, Dan never, they weren't taking any tryouts. There was no tryouts. There was no letting anybody on the court. And for some reason, God intervened, or it was destined to be, but they said, all right, go ahead and get your cesta and throw it around out there for a couple minutes. So Matt gets his stuff. He goes out there and he starts throwing. And I don't remember if it was Ara or Stu, and they're like, he's never played. Like, how long has he been playing? And I said, and I told the whole story about the batting cage and this and that. And they're like, his form is like great. And I said, that this is what we've been doing. And so anyway, I see them talking, and next thing you know, they invite him to come back again and practice with some of the players, and he did really well. And so they're like, we're going to offer you a contract to come play. And so that's kind of what got it started. Douglas got the offer to play there and started practicing down there, and, took off, and, has been there the whole time. And I remember Scott Savin said to Benny, he's like, do you play? And he's like, yeah, I'm still. And Benny was younger at this time. And he's like, yeah, I'm practicing. He's like, you want to play here? And he's like, well, I'd hope so. I hope to one day. And so anyway, when we would come down and visit, Ben would practice down there, and, we kept doing our thing up here. And Benny getting there, my mom at that time lived, and I know this is a roundabout way, but my mom was still in Connecticut at that time, and Matt DiDomizio has his amateur court there. And so over the summer, Benny was staying with my mom in Connecticut and practicing there for like a month or two, probably a couple months, and practicing with the guys that I all knew growing up. And then, he went down there and they saw him play again, Scott and Stu and Ara. And then, when Benny was 17 at the time, they were like, he's too young. And they're like, it's okay. We'll give him a contract anyway. So that's how Benny ended up getting there as well. But it really is. It's great. I get more enjoyment watching them play. I think any dad, that has done anything, you always enjoy watching your kids succeed, much more so than the stuff that you did growing up. I mean, I look fondly at the things I did, but I'm really happy for them to see them, getting the experiences that they've had. They played in the Basque Country last summer, and it's just been a phenomenal experience. And for me, it's reconnected me with so many people that I knew growing up, both online and in person. And it's just been it's been a blessing for me, really.
Do you travel a lot to see them play in live?
I was traveling a lot this past year. I have not, just because my job doesn't allow me to travel as much right now. But I was traveling a lot, and I'll be back down there this probably September when they open up is when I plan to go back down. I haven't been to Jam Arena yet, so I'm excited to see that. I know they've been working on some different balls, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Douglas and Benny are two of the stars of the roster. They are two unbelievable players, and they deserve a lot of credit because of the story that we have heard through the talk with their daddy, with James. It's such a pleasure listening to you, James. And if you like the idea, they will start the new season in September. In 2 or 3 months, when the season is already started, we can make like some kind of chat talk, a tertulia. So
Yeah.
we can talk about how they're doing, how they're playing, other
I would love
stuff
to.
around.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I always joke, kind of serious and not serious, that I always wanted to be a jai-alai announcer. right? And of course, I'm up here in North Carolina, so I can't do anything. But I always tell Stu, hey, somebody's out and you need me, I'm available. Just let me know. I'll come down and fill in for a week. But I watch obviously the partidos in Spain, and Matt and Benny, they watch a lot of old video of players, and then we'll talk about how the old guys compare to the newer guys, and then the pace of the game and how things are a little different now versus back then, and just who would do good, could this guy be a great player now versus then, and those types of things. So it's they watch a lot of film, and that's one of the things. One, as a coach, I love to teach, right? I love to coach, and so I'm always looking at film and watching players, and just to me, I love the study of the game. And I know a lot of older guys like me still play. I don't have the place to really play anymore, but I get more enjoyment out of watching, and I'll fix old cestas, and I'll tinker with things, and I'll sew balls and that type of stuff. I get more enjoyment about that than actually getting out there and playing, because playing hurts too much for me at this age.
Are you optimistic about the future of jai-alai in the U.S.?
Well, I'm an optimistic person no matter what. So I am. I don't know where it's going. I know they've done a lot of work to get from where they are. I'm talking about the World Jai-alai League to where it is now. You probably wouldn't, if you'd have seen it, when it first started to where it is now. It's unbelievable how far it's come. It'll be interesting to see in what format and form it takes off, because the game's too special to not be popular everywhere. And it's resurging in the Basque Country, southern France. We're seeing young players come up. So I am optimistic. I don't know what I don't have a clear vision of what it's gonna be like, but I feel like the momentum is there, and I feel like just getting to that next level, whether it's more sponsorships or being on TV regularly, would really kick it off. The sports betting, I know, has been the new aspect to it. So it'll be interesting to see what the next chapter is, because I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be good.
We live in a very interesting moment in jai-alai, as far as overseas and here in the Basque Country, because like James have just said, the sport is resurging over here. So I hope, and I cross my fingers in order to see jai-alai succeeding in the US, because the sports needs it. James, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I know that we have much more stuff to talk, but if you don't mind, we leave it for another day.
Absolutely,
yeah. For you?
I loved it. Anything you want to talk about, if we want to do another one, I'm definitely available and want to do it. And if you want to do, we can do some game analysis too when we're at the Jam Arena later this year.
That's right, because I realize, and also I know that so far the audience realize that James Langhans knows a great deal about jai-alai.
A lot of years of studying, and it's something. I am very humble and blessed to be a part of such a great game for so many years, and to be back in it again after all these years. I think it was truly meant to be, because otherwise, it's just, the story is too interesting and too unusual to be back otherwise.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Juan. Talk to you soon.